Hi everyone and welcome along. You all loved painting those miniature bouquets on gift tags a few weeks back. So now we're going to adapt the design a little bit and turn them into some really gorgeous place cards with a cool little cutout. So grab your paints and let's get started. So we've got a piece of watercolour paper that is 12 centimetres high and it's about 10 centimetres across. What I need to do is find the midway point, so I'm just going to draw a line in pencil across there, and that gives us the point at which the card is going to fold, and also gives us the idea of what sort of size we're going to be painting in. But what I want to do is I want to sort of do it so we've got some flowers sort of coming up over the top that we can cut out, and when it folds up it's going to have a lovely sort of pop-up design on it. Now so many of you have asked me if we can learn how to paint these two little miniature bouquets that were just sort of featured as extra ones in my tutorial of the miniature gift tags from a week or so ago. So this seemed like a perfect way to not only teach you these but also give you a new skill. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to sort of give a rough sort of sense of the flowers sort of coming over like that. So the bouquet is going to be a bit more on a curve, sort of like that. And then what I thought might be nice is have the ribbon like that. So let's start with our peony card first, and I need to wake up some colours, so I'm going to get a larger brush than the ones I've got here. These are my pointed round brushes. We've got a 2/10, 4/10, a size, what have we got, a size 4 and a size 2, and then I've got my rigger brush there. But I'm going to use a size 8 brush to wake up the colours in my palette. So we need some pink tones. Here is Opera Rose, and that's going to be a really useful colour for our peonies, as well as Permanent Rose and alizarin crimson is always useful as well. As well as in the bouquet, we've also got some lovely sort of yellowy flowers. So I've got my cadmium yellow woken up, green gold down here, sap green, and we'll also want a little bit of Payne's grey. So we'll get all of those woken up, and I'm going to get some fresh water because we're going to do lovely, nice, vibrant pink flowers. We want to make sure that they're nice and bright. Okay, so I'm going to begin with my size 2 brush, and I'm going to take a little bit of Permanent Rose and just dilute it in the palette there, get it really nice and pale and delicate. And the Opera Rose, just get them nice and sort of diluted down in the palette there so we can see what we've got. And I'm going to begin with the Permanent Rose, and I'm just going to paint in a nice little sort of cup shape in the palette there, and then I'm going to take a few extra little brush strokes and a few over the top, and all of a sudden we've created a rather large blousy peony shape. So I'll do another one again. So I'm going to be going over this line, over the fold. So 1, 2, then sort of fill in the middle a little bit. But the more sort of imperfect, the better. That's a really nice one just on its own. And then of course also a few tightly closed in sort of tennis ball shaped buds. And I think let's get one more in, one more large one. A few petals that have just come off the bottom. Lovely. Now I'm going to get some opera rose, just sort of flood a little bit of that in there. And we're going to let those dry. So while we let those dry, we can look at the ribbon. Now you can see on here that the ribbon has got these sort of twists and turns in it. And so we're first going to paint, and I described it like a string of sausages. So let's start from here. I've got my size 2/10 brush, and I'm basically going to create some tapered lines with my dilute permanent rose, which will make the effect of a twisting ribbon. And it's maybe a bit hard to see immediately, and also they aren't all sort of uniform shapes. Some will be shorter, some might have a bit more of a kink in them. But the idea is that these will twist together and form a lovely ribbon, and then of course a bow here. We'll put in central block, and then just like we've been doing around the edge, sort of 3 tapered shapes. Okay, so now the flowers are nearly dry. I'm going to mix in some cadmium yellow with just a little bit of green gold. I just want to take the yellow just into a slightly green mode, and I am going to paint some little sort of dotty shapes like this to create a lovely flower with my I've got my 2/10 brush, and I'm just using a bit of water once I've established the colour. So we'll pop one in. Just going around the edge there. One coming up here. So if you want, you could start by just sort of doing a dotted line of the angle you want it to go. But for the sake of this project, we really want to make sure that we get a few coming up over the drawn line. Okay, that's looking nice. And now I'm going to add a bit more sap green to that colour to make it much more of a distinct green. And I just don't want too much on the brush, so just knock it back a fraction. And I'm just going to add a few little greeny accents, just sort of little curves just sort of on the underside of those, and the beginnings of stems. Now it's at this point that you start to go, well, am I going to fill the rest of that with just leaves and just stems? At this point, you might want to just add a few extra little buds, maybe, just little ones. And what's cool with these ones is we can get some alizarin crimson at this point and just add in a little curve of colour just to sort of mix it up, because we're now going to go back and look at these flowers. So what I want now is a much more concentrated bit of permanent rose, and we're now going to create a bit more of an interior to the flowers. So I'm going to first sort of use the clues that the brush strokes have given me, so you can sort of see by painting in sort of where the brush strokes created that gap anyway, and then I'm going to just sort of then have a bit more creative license and sort of create a few little curves just to create the center of that flower. And now with just sort of some slightly diluted tones, I'm going to do a few extra sort of brush strokes on the petals, just using the permanent rose and the opera rose as I see fit. Very much sort of anchoring those petals down in the middle. And suddenly we're sort of creating quite a rounded shape. And then a little bit of alizarin crimson I'm just going to mix into my opera rose and permanent rose. Just want to sort of get a bit more of a deeper colour there, just for a little bit more depth and darkness going on there. But the beauty of miniature flowers is how much you don't need to put in. Now whilst those dry, we can use this slightly stronger colour to create some light and shade on our ribbon, still using it in a fairly dilute manner. So I'm using my 4/10 brush to either sort of pick out the twists, sort of like this here, or to just give a bit of a shape to one of the broader sections of the ribbon. I'm now going to take some more regular sap green, and I'm going to start to fill in some leaves and stems on these peonies. So I've got my 2/10 brush, and the first thing is to just sort of establish some stems. Don't feel the need to paint the entire stem from sort of top to bottom, because we're now going to start filling out the space with some leaves. So nice sort of long slender leaves for peonies, and you can have them sort of coming out all over the place. They don't need to be necessarily sort of obviously attached to, oh no, the wrong green, there we go. And we're just going to fill out the bouquet with plenty of leaves. Next, a few sepals on the plants, on the flowers. So I'm using a slightly more concentrated sap green here. And for the sort of tightly packed ball buds, the sepals come up quite close, and then they just unfurl a little bit. And now I'm going to add a bit of Payne's grey to sap green, and we're going to add some little sort of low light leaf lines, a few extra little stems. Just to sort of build up a bit more interest and depth in the piece. I'll finish these flowers with a tiny bit of concentrated alizarin crimson just in the middle there, just to give it a little bit of a scribble of extra darkness and depth. And finally we just need to add a fine line to our ribbon. So I'm going to take some of that alizarin crimson and just get a little bit mixed up with some of the pinks already in the palette, and with my 4/10 brush I can start to outline the twisted ribbon. And there you have a lovely little peony bouquet with a little space for a name to write on a place card. I'm going to now teach you how to do this one. We'll get it to this stage and then we'll do the cutting out. Right, so we've drawn up the bouquet and the ribbon, and I'm now going to get some Imperial Purple. And I've got a size 0 brush, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the tip of the brush and press it down, and in doing so I create some lovely petals. 5 petals works really nicely for this, and I'm going to do some smaller ones too. Sometimes you might need to just create them with a brush stroke or two extra, but they are lovely and simple for little petal flowers. 5 petals working round, and then for some sort of on the edge you can sort of just angle them a bit so that the ones at the top and bottom are maybe a bit squashed like that. And I've also got a few that are sort of more like sort of trumpeting out, so we just see some quite sort of closed buds. And sort of creating a little V shape, and then just sort of fanning it out and fiddling around with it a little bit there. So I'm going to use some cadmium red to create some more petals, just like this, more flowers. I'm sort of trying to have them so they're not all bleeding and blending into one another. So you might find you need to be a little bit more careful with your second round of flowers. But yeah, just start to sort of build clusters, and don't forget about the ones on the edges that might be a bit more angled like this, and of course some of the more trumpety ones that can just be created just by sort of fiddling around with the brush a bit. I mean that works, that's fine. And then we're going to do one last layer with some orange ones as well. I'm now going to use that green that I had mixed up, just a little bit of green gold and sap green, and I'm going to put in the stems once again. So there's quite a lot more flowers in here, so there's sort of more angles going on, but even then you still don't need to worry about sort of joining up every single flower. But the most important thing is that the stems all feel like they're going down into the bouquet cluster. And once you've got that in, you can start to add just a few little extra lines, and maybe in a slightly different tone, different colour, So I've got the green gold just on its own here, and then maybe a little bit of sap green, and of course bring those stems down into there. And then I start to add in leaves, whether those are nice sort of accent leaves that are sort of helping shape the outer edges of the bouquet. And I'm using all the greens at my disposal here. Or if they're leaves that are sort of part of the flower, so we did a sort of three-pronged leaf. So one central point, and then you can come off the sides like that. Just start to fill up the shape. So popping all those leaves in really makes a huge difference. So I've now got some Mars Black here, and I'm going to now dot clusters in the centres of these flowers, sort of coming out like a bit of a starburst. So start with your larger flowers first, because it's quite a big sort of contrast to add this black onto your flowers. And then just having that little accent of low light colour really sort of helps bring these flowers together. And then we're going to add a little bit of extra green to the leaves, with the Payne's grey mixed up with sap green. Just wake that up again. Add a few stems in, and then we're going to just add some detail lines to the ribbon that was painted originally in Imperial Purple, and now we'll just add more concentrated Imperial Purple to get that done. And to finish off, I just like to put maybe a little bit of extra sort of accent colour. So this is just some slightly stronger Imperial Purple, just here and there. Helps you sort of create an interior of those trumpet flowers. So I'll get a bit of red. And there we go. So we've got these two here, and I'm just going to change my kit over to get a scalpel, cutting board and a rubber. So here's one I've prepared earlier, and I think that looks pretty gorgeous, and I'm going to show you how I did that. So here's our place card. The pencil's still there. What I'm going to do, now I'm using a scalpel, craft scalpel. Please, if you are unfamiliar with these or underage, you must make sure you have adult supervision whilst using these. These are very, very sharp and very serious. So what I'm going to do is, we've got the sharp point, but I'm actually going to turn the blade upside down to use it to score along the area where I want a fold in the card. So you can see I've scored there. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to always be cutting away from your fingers, from your other hand, and I'm just going to quite sort of simply and rather sort of loosely cut around the edge of the design. I'm sure those of you who've got those clever Cricut machines will probably be laughing at this. You could always use some scissors, but when you've got it sort of being cut out of a shape, it can be a bit tricky to use them. But we're nearly there. Nearly blew it, nearly went off the edge there. It's very important that you've got a bit left that's not been cut. Now on the other side I can sort of see if there are any places where I just need to help that cut along in the little joins. And then just gently tease it open. Careful with that bit. And then the scored line means that you've got a lovely place card, and then you can rub out any of the pencil and you've got yourself 2 lovely place cards. Now there are tons of brilliant calligraphy videos and tutors on YouTube. One in particular I really like is Wild Sea Calligraphy. So if you are keen to have a go, that's something like this. There we go, I think Ant gets one, and I'm going to have the other one. So I learnt calligraphy as a wedding stationer. And yeah, I think if you're looking to learn a little bit of modern calligraphy, then you should hit up Wild Sea Calligraphy on YouTube, because she's absolutely fantastic, really good teacher, and has a Patreon as well. But less of that and more of the finished place card with some gorgeous cut out flower paintings. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed that one. I want to say a huge thank you to our patrons for their support, because that support enables us to keep creating videos like these that everyone can enjoy. And if you enjoyed it, then hit the like button and comment below to let me know how you got on with that one. And of course, if you never want to miss another video, then hit the subscription button and the little notification bell, and we'll see you again next time. Bye!